It's the Texas weather discussion video. This is actually the evening version for Monday, the 4th of September, on Labor Day. Of course, Texas weather is going to trend a little drier and also significantly cooler during the latter half of this week. And tropics are actually pretty active. A lot of people are asking or just ranting and raving about Hurricane Irma on the board. Hopefully, I'll be able to answer some questions here, but first, like we always do, let's take a look at the water vapor satellite view across the CONUS. Texas is in drier air. A 594 heat bubble still to the west, and also a deep trough is in northeastern Canada. We're going to exceed some effects from that during the later this week with the cold front coming through because of that. But for now, we're still going to stay very warm. At 506, Arlington 94, DFW 95, but Weatherford 91. Mostly in the 90s on this map, but I think we'll trend cooler as we progress towards this week with the cold front coming through by Tuesday night. And of course, here's the watch warning map. The main action here is to the north of us, where they have red flag warnings and air quality alerts for fires that are currently ongoing and up in the north. And we have a multitude of severe thunderstorm watches in parts of the Midwest, extending from Illinois to Michigan and Ohio. Down here, things are pretty quiet. We have an enhanced risk for severe weather for parts of Indiana, Ohio, and parts of Michigan, and slight marginal risks for some of the adjacent states. And on day 2, we have a risk for severe weather for parts of the Northeast and parts of the New England area. And down here, you notice that we're in green. We have a risk for thunderstorms, but really no organized severe weather is expected. And on day 3, we trend drier. We have a marginal risk for severe storms for parts of the Carolinas and parts of the East Coast. But down here, I think we should trend drier as we encounter drier air. Take a look at the rainfall outlook for the next 7 days. This is valid through Tuesday of next week. And you can clearly see the bullseye amount. That's in relation to what we're going to talk about in a minute. But here's the tropical weather outlooks here, the latest on the tropics. We'll just kind of get a broad brush overview of things. Of course, we have Irma on the board, but there's 2 distinct waves, one in the Gulf and one that's in the back of Irma. Both have a 40% chance of developing during the next 2 days. I think the one in the Gulf that will be pushed down by the cold front that will come through on Tuesday and Wednesday. That will just drop to the south. But let's take a look at this one. This is now Invest 94L. Here's the 5-day graphic outlook, and this one has a high chance of developing during the next 5 days, and this one has an 80% chance of developing, to be exact. And if this one becomes a tropical storm or a hurricane, this one will be Jose. And here's this is now Invest 94L. This one stays to the north of the Leeward Islands, and ultimately this will just stay north to the Leeward Islands. The intensity guidance brings us up to a hurricane during the next 5 days, actually. So we're just going to have to wait and see with this one and how this will behave. This will more than likely be a recurving system, so we won't have to worry about that as much. But let's look at Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma is not looking too good. Maximum sustained winds are at 130 miles an hour. This is now a Category 4 storm as of 5 p.m. AST, and you can see the official track from the National Hurricane Center. We have hurricane watches and warnings going out for Puerto Rico and the Leeward Islands, where they're going to experience some effects from this. Again, this is a Category 4 major hurricane, And let's take a look at some of the model output. Here's the arrival time of the tropical storm force winds, and you can see by Friday, as early as Friday morning, parts of South Florida may see some of the tropical storm force winds by Friday morning. So that's the earliest that they can start seeing some effects. And here's the model guidance on this thing. And most of these models, of course, as most resources have been telling you, this actually recurves. This actually gets towards Cuba, and then makes a sharp turn to the north towards southern Florida. Most models basically agree on this, and here's the GFS ensemble. This one has 21 members, and of course this one is very famous. This one hasn't been performing too well during recent days, and the mean. And do want to note that the mean, which is the black line that you see, is the mean is basically the black line with the squares. Now this one brings it really to the north, and then basically stalls it near Ohio, basically dissipates this near Ohio. Now, do want to note that you only need to take this with a grain of salt, because this model hasn't been doing too sweet during the medium range. Let's go to the more reliable European model, and this one is, of course, more reliable. This one basically tracks it, doesn't even make landfall towards Florida. It waits till getting towards the Carolinas before making landfall, and then it tracks towards the northeast in West Virginia, not West Virginia, near Pennsylvania, and some of the adjacent states. So I'd say past 4 or 5 days, or a week perhaps. We ultimately don't know where this thing might end up. And again, here's the official track from the National Hurricane Center. And again, I show you this because, of course, this is the official track, and also you might see other screaming models like the GFS on social media all the time. I'm going to show you. Of course, I'm going to show you some examples of that here in a little bit, but of course, here's the official track from the National Hurricane Center once again. But let's go to the dailies here. Here's the GFS. This is the 12Z run, valid tomorrow at 1 o'clock at 500 millibars. Nice deep amplitude trough in the north by Canada and near the Great Lakes. Wow, that will help aid in pushing a cold front down to the south. And tomorrow, I think. And by tomorrow, I think our last 90 degree day for a while should be tomorrow, while we're still in dry air. Now this is Wednesday after midnight, and you can see the cold front comes through, bringing scattered showers and storms during the overnight hours. And by Wednesday afternoon, that clears town, and we should stay cool from that, with highs only in the low 80s. And I think we should see lows potentially reaching down towards the low 50s in some spots, and that'll feel good. Now this is Thursday. Again, we'll stay the same, mostly sunny and pleasant, with highs in the mid 80s, and by Friday we'll stay dry. But let's take a deeper look at Hurricane Irma here. By Friday, you can see it's by the Bahamas. It's getting ready to make landfall at the Bahamas at this point. And Saturday afternoon, this makes its way towards the northern Cuba area along the coast of Cuba, and this is Sunday. This is Sunday afternoon. This is Sunday afternoon, and 800. Now this one has a very anomalous pressure number, and I don't really believe that for a second. I think the GFS has been famous for producing these unrealistic numbers in terms of pressure numbers here. But I'll show you the European model in just a second. This is Now this is Monday. This hurricane Irma basically skirts the coast of the East Coast, very, very close towards Jacksonville. It's near Daytona Beach and Palm Coast, and the Jacksonville Beach, and some of those adjacent areas at this time by Monday. And this is Tuesday. You can see that's very well made landfall by the Carolina and Virginia, by North Carolina and Virginia. And just understand that this is just model output. This is not an official forecast, and a lot of things can and will change here. And this is of course Wednesday. Of course, things don't become as confident at that point. You only take this with a grain of salt at this time. Now let's look at the European on Sunday, on basically Sunday morning, and on basically Sunday morning. Here's the European model, and here's the GFS and the European model side by side, and the agreement is just outstanding with this. Couldn't have been any better. So models are basically starting to agree that this system will impact this southern Florida most likely by during the day, by Sunday, September the 10th. And this is Monday. This circulation is not actually inland. This is actually just skirting the East Coast once again. But again, Florida could still very well see some impacts from this. This is Tuesday. This one has this making landfall in South Carolina and Georgia. And Wednesday, this ultimately ends up near the southeast, near Nashville in Kentucky, and Indiana, and some of the adjacent areas. So really the bottom line is, those of you that are in the East Coast near Florida, Georgia, South North Carolina, even Virginia, and even West Virginia, you should most likely go through your hurricane preparations right now, as we're near the peak of hurricane season, and a lot of things can and will change. Now let's go out to the end of the forecast period. This is Thursday, September the 14th. Heights are about where they should be for us, and down below that, that's a pretty fair day. Remnant circulation of Irma on the GFS is to the north of New York State, but we won't have to worry about that. But numbers for the next week, you can see that cold front by Wednesday. Highs will only get to the mid 80s at that point, but by Thursday we could see lows to upper 50s. Wow, fall-like weather coming along. We could be in the 90s at this point, but obviously we're not. A nice fresh breath of fall. That's it for the Texas weather discussion video this evening. I'll have more notes in the blog. The next video here by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. If you can, catch your local TV stations on the air at 6 and 10 o'clock. Thanks for watching. Have a great evening and night, and Godspeed.